Welcome to Freedom Journey's Sacred Places. Freedom Journeys is WURD Radio's year-long storytelling initiative commemorating the 250th anniversary of the United States. We're celebrating 250 phenomenal Philadelphians whose stories have too often been overlooked or untold, and whose lives and legacies continue to shape our city, our country, and our world. As part of that initiative, Freedom Journeys, Sacred Places, produced and presented by Solomon Jones, explores the places where Black history happened and highlights the people working today to preserve these remarkable sites and the stories they hold. This series is made possible in part through the support of our community impact sponsor, the Preservation Alliance for Greater Philadelphia. And now, here's Solomon Jones.
You know the painting. An elderly Black man holding a banjo in the yellow light of a bright room. A Black child sitting on his lap, his fingers on the strings, longing for knowledge. There's a music to the Banjo Lesson, Henry Ossawa Tanner's most prominent work. It holds the notes of generations in an instrument that is uniquely African. Tanner was the most influential African-American artist of the 19th century, but his story does not begin with the painting. It begins on a plantation where his mother, Sarah Elizabeth Miller, was a child caught between slavery and freedom. Sarah's mother had a heart-rending choice to make.
As a child, 6 years old, her mother, who was enslaved on a plantation, I believe either in Maryland or Virginia, the Pennsylvania Abolition Society has a wagon that's making its way through. Her mother has 11 children, but there's only 6 seats on the wagon. So her mother has to make this impossible choice of which one of her children are going to, be able to go onto this wagon towards freedom. She chooses that for Sarah. Sarah comes through Philadelphia at that time, spends some time in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, ends up in Pittsburgh.
That's Christopher Rogers, co-coordinator, Friends of the Tanner House. We spoke outside the home at 2908 West Diamond Street, where Sarah Elizabeth Miller lived with the man she married, Benjamin Tucker Tanner. The house was beautiful when it was built in the 19th century. Now it's seen better days. But this is the house where Benjamin, a bishop in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, became a force to be reckoned with.
He was recruited to Philadelphia in 1868 to lead the Christian Recorder, which is the newspaper of the AME Church. So it becomes one of these institutions that are carrying the sort of freedom dreams of Black folks after the sort of period of enslavement. And he's running that newspaper, puts them in communication with Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois. Like, these are people who are in Bishop Tanner's sort of like Rolodex at the time, if you will, right? You have his partners and also Henry Ossawa Tanner's mother, Sarah Elizabeth Miller Tanner.
Together, the Tanners not only raised their family, they raised their people. Their commitment to Black freedom was evident in the name of their first child, Henry. Rogers points him out in pictures covering the missing windows of the house.
So Henry Ossawa Tanner is top left. That is their first child, right? Okay. He's born in 1859. His name, Henry Ossawa Tanner. And Ossawa, as in Osawatomie, Kansas, where family friend to the bishop, John Brown, is organizing amongst many sort of ministers and other folks to think about how do we end the barbarism of enslavement in this country. So he's born in June of 1859. We know the Harper's Ferry Raid happens in October of 1859. Yeah. So you can think about the type of conversations that the family was involved in even at that period, right? But Henry Ossawa Tanner, they moved to Philadelphia in 1868. His mother buys him his first paint kit. He eventually, graduates from Vaux. Okay. He goes on to Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, and really begins to find himself within painting.
I wondered how that happened, so I spoke with Leah Stevenson, the Kenneth R. Woodcock Curator of Historical American Art at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts. Tell us about how he became an artist. What was the impetus for that?
Well, Tanner grew up around an art community in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, and he was training at the academy known as PAFA in Philadelphia in the 1870s. And it was really what sparked his fascination with art. It was also seeing exhibitions that were going on in Philadelphia, and it was training with some of the leading American artists in that late 19th century moment, like Thomas Eakins. And it was a way for him, too, to really think about his own African-American community in Philadelphia through his art, reacting against some of the stereotypes that were prevalent in the 19th century. And I think that was really what was inspiring him, was how he was going to create a new type of artwork for a 19th century audience.
You know, as I look at Black artists in Philadelphia who wanted to study, such as Marian Anderson. She wanted to go to the University of Arts. She couldn't get in because she was Black. What was PAFA's position, and why did PAFA admit Tanner at that time?
I say PAFA was a bit unusual as an art school, is that we were very open to always accepting women artists and artists of color since a few years after our founding. So we were one of the first. By the 1830s and 1840s, Black artists were studying at PAFA. And I think it was a way to envision PAFA as one of the first art schools and the first art museum, as this was a democratic art space in Philadelphia. This was not one modeled after more of the old-fashioned European academies necessarily, but they wanted to open up. And it led to more diverse student bodies, but also a collection because of that. I think PAFA also stands out a bit in terms of that exhibitions were including artists like Tanner, which was not the case in other venues where Black artists were discriminated against into many exhibition arenas or juried shows during this period of time.
But in order to rise above racism, Tanner needed more than a school that was willing to take him. Like any artist, he needed someone who would push him. Leah Stevenson explains.
There is always interesting lores around how artists become inspired at a very young age. It's often through their parents. His mother was giving him supplies. His father was tied to the church. So I can imagine with these two influences, he was also seeing religious paintings and artwork at a fairly young age with illustrations or biblical scenes. I think that's what really sparked him as well.
How did that spirituality play out in the work that he did?
Tanner really carves his career by focusing on religious paintings. And it's really where he creates almost what critics called a modern religious painting scenes. He was looking at scenes like Lazarus, Nicodemus, the Lion's Den, and thinking about how he could portray them with almost this mystical spirituality. And it really comes across with his paint strokes, his color palette. It's almost these ethereal greens and blues that his canvases almost seem to shine from within. And they're these fascinating palettes that he's experimenting with. And what leads him to travel to Jerusalem and Palestine. He wants to research where these biblical events were actually occurring with the texts that he grew up with. And he wants to create these authentic religious paintings for himself.
From a Black perspective, how did that spirituality play out? And how was it different given that it was inspired by the African-American church?
I think for him, he was thinking about the African-American church and, again, working against those stereotypes that he'd grown up with and very racial stereotypes in the late 19th century. And for him, I think a spiritual and religious outlet was for him to instill a sense of humanity in these scenes. He was often, in some cases, looking at Black models for his paintings, religious scenes. There is a painting in PAFA's collection, Nicodemus from 1899, and it's a question of how is he portraying Christ? Is it a Black model he was using? So I think Tanner wanted to focus not on whitewashing religious history or these biblical events, but really think about how he can incorporate his own African-American community and upbringing into these scenes.
It was an upbringing that led to achievement, not just for Tanner, but also for his sister, and then for generations to come. Christopher Rogers picks up the story from here.
Right here is Haley Tanner Dillon Johnson. This is his younger sister. So she worked with Bishop on the Christian Recorder. She was like one of the associate editors. She got married, while she was in her early 20s. But her husband, transitioned when she was about 24 years old. She's trying to figure out what she wants to do next. Knowing the family and their sort of sense of accomplishment, says, well, go be a doctor. She enrolls at the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania. She graduates with honors. This is 1890, right? And at that time, Booker T. Washington, family friend, has Tuskegee Institute in Alabama and wants to start a nursing school and is looking for a highly qualified, someone community values minded to start that nursing school. He comes to Philadelphia, to this house, we believe, meets with Bishop and also Haley, and convinces Haley, this free Black woman in 1890, to go to Alabama to start the nursing school. I think about the legacy of transforming institutions in service of, Black communities, of Black youth, of Black sort of like aspirations and ambitions. And certainly that's what they did. The legacy of the family even extends to the University of Pennsylvania. So like this comes from Sadie Tanner Mizell Alexander's archives, right? Mm-hmm. That is Henry Ossawa Tanner's niece. She was born in this house. This is her mother here. And she marries Aaron Mizell, right? Aaron Mizell is the first Black man to graduate from the University of Pennsylvania's law school. His brother, Nathan Mizell, first Black man to graduate from the University of Pennsylvania's medical school. He starts Frederick Douglass Hospital, which is only the second Black-owned, Black-operated hospital in the country. Carter G. Woodson called this house the center of Black intellectual life in Philadelphia during its time, because of the sort of networks of people, their accomplishments, and the work that the Tanner family did. Yeah.
So, Leah, there's this incredible legacy of academic achievement and firsts with this Tanner family. But I got to be honest, I keep going back to his mother and the story of her escape from slavery on the Underground Railroad. What role does her story play in the work that Tanner did?
Besides the religious scenes, he's also focusing on these beautiful compositions like the Banjo Lesson, where he's showcasing this generational knowledge and relationship between African-American communities. You have an older man teaching a banjo lesson to a younger Black child. And it's this beautiful relationship that Tanner portrays. And you can see how his mother's history is tied to this, that this is coming right out of the Civil War and this Reconstruction era. And Tanner instills such humanity in this. And there's a sense of this connection and stillness to this composition. There's also moments where you look at Tanner's career and the topics he's selecting, where there's tied to ideas of freedom or prisoners. And I think there's an element of his mother's background influencing that, how he's thinking about how his mother escaped through the Underground Railroad and ended up in Pennsylvania, which was this abolitionist center at points, and how Tanner was gravitating toward religious and biblical narratives that focused on ideas of freedom and kind of slavery's history in the Bible sense.
But there was also his sense of community beyond his mother. Tanner spent much of his life in Paris after his time at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, because racism, even in art, was constant, and life for Black people was hard. I wanted to ask you about how the social pressures on Black people, how what was going on around Tanner, how did those things influence his art?
That's beautiful. So one of the things I have with me right now is his image called The Thankful Poor, which was made in 1894. And it's kind of twinned with one of his other most famous pieces called The Banjo Lesson. Like some would say it features the same characters, right? And this Thankful Poor is made in 1894. At the time, from what we understand from the family story, Henry Ossawa Tanner, he's in Paris, right? But he's sick. And obviously with the family and the legacy here, he has much more support to come home, right, rather than being in Paris. So he travels back across the Atlantic, he comes home, and he's living here at 2908 West Diamond Street. And it's 1893, he's able to recover, with the support of his family. And he's trying to figure out, how do I recover my dream, right? Yeah. And at that time, images like this are not depicted of Black folks, right? The sort of caricature and minstrelsy that's being the sort of popular image of how African Americans are represented is not sort of like shown. And he's responding to saying like, well, we got something to hold on to. We don't have to be what they're saying about us, right? We have the tools within us. We have the power within our communities. We still can come together and we still can build the things that we need.
Coming together requires community. It requires institutional knowledge. It requires hope. For Lonnie Coleman, an advisory board member of the Friends of the Tanner House, a neighborhood resident for 55 years, The Tanner House represents all of that.
How have you seen this neighborhood change?
If you want the truth, I've seen this neighborhood transfer from good to bad and possibly going back to good with the Tanner the Friends of the Tanner Foundation project that we're working on, myself, Christopher Rogers, and the executive board, and now myself, who sits on the advisory board of the Friends of Tanner.
Why is it important for the community to be involved in this?
I think the young people in the Strawberry Mansion and the surrounding Philadelphia neighborhoods need to see the prosperity that was here, left, and possibly coming back to Strawberry Mansion.
Mm-hmm.
But restoring the Tanner House, which began in 2021 when the house was on the brink of imminent collapse, will take more than desire. It'll take work and funding and a clear-eyed look at what this community is up against.
What I'm seeing is the same thing I see all over North Philly, which is there's gentrification, there is construction, but at the same time, there's some of the decay.
Yes.
You know, and it's living side by side.
Yes.
How does this house exist in that dual reality?
I love that question, because one of the things that we are really intent on doing in our process, right, and working with the neighborhood, working with the Strawberry Mansion CDC, working with the Strawberry Mansion Learning Center, is learning about the rich fabric of the neighborhood and its sort of generations of historical contributions, right, and recognizing that as we go about restoring this house and the legacy of the Tanners, who were many times here before Strawberry Mansion became Strawberry Mansion, you know, that we have to be able to set their legacy, right, within the sort of ongoing work in the neighborhood, right? So we talk about how does the legacy of the Tanner family, right, and the different pursuits that they were involved in represent pursuits that folks are involved in all across this neighborhood. Right. And how can the house become sort of like a foundational support to amplify the sort of dreams and pursuits and organizations and collectives and community-based research that is already happening?
And perhaps that's the lesson of Tanner, that no dream is too big to achieve. My last question to you is about Henry Tanner now and Henry Tanner going forward. What is his legacy as an artist and as a man, in your view?
The legacy is an artist in terms of representing an African-American community at this pivotal moment in American art, is that he is focusing on these moments of humanity and these peaceful compositions when everything was in flux. I see him also as this leading figure about how do you reinvent American art and re-envision it for an artist who's really pushing up against some of these realistic traditions. And I see him too as a really interesting advocate of an artist who's shifting his career and kind of really breaking boundaries. To move to Paris and relocate, it really shows his commitment to art and his career, and kind of going up against racial discrimination like that and realizing I need to leave the United States for that reason. I think his legacy shifting to kind of showcases how American art is now looking at these overlooked artists again, who are pivotal to these narratives of American art history.
I'm Solomon Jones, and this is Freedom Journeys, Sacred Places on WURD.
You've been listening to Freedom Journeys Sacred Places. This series is made possible through the generous support of our community impact sponsor, the Preservation Alliance for Greater Philadelphia. We also thank our community partners for helping connect these stories with audiences throughout our region: the Brewerytown Sharswood Neighborhood Coalition, Pequessing Trail of History, Byberry Friends Meeting, the Society for the Preservation of Philadelphia African American Assets, and the Fund for Sacred Places. Freedom Journeys is made possible through the support of the Office of Senator Vincent Hughes, State Representative Jordan A. Harris, Chairman of the Pennsylvania House Appropriations Committee and the Pennsylvania Department of Commerce and Economic Development, the Philadelphia Funder Collaborative for the Semi-Quincentennial, Comcast, PICO, the Philadelphia Parking Authority, Independence Blue Cross, and the Office of Philadelphia City Council Member Cindy Bass. To learn more, visit wordradio.com/freedomjourneys. Thanks for listening.